Man posts picture of stone found on beach. Next day police raid his house. John loved spending his afternoons walking along the beach. The sound of the waves crashing against the shore, the salty air on his skin, and the warm sun on his face made him feel at peace. He often lost track of time and would end up walking for hours without realizing it. Hey there, Viral Videos here. Before we go on, like this video, smash the subscribe button and click the notification bell. We post the most beautiful, amazing, and scary videos every single day. Let's proceed with the video. One sunny afternoon as John was walking along the shoreline, he noticed something out of the ordinary. A small object caught his attention. It was about the size of a pebble and had a unique shape. As he got closer, he realized that it was a rock. However, it wasn't just any rock. This one had a strange, almost otherworldly appearance, with smooth edges and unusual markings that looked like they had been etched onto the surface. John picked up the rock and held it in his hand, admiring its beauty. It felt cool and smooth to the touch, and he could feel its weight in his palm. He turned it over and over, trying to make sense of the markings. They seemed almost like a language, but one that he couldn't quite understand. Excited by his discovery, John took out his phone and snapped a picture of the stone. He wanted to show it to his friends on social media and see if anyone knew what it could be. As he walked along the beach, he couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement and anticipation. It was as if he had stumbled upon something truly extraordinary, something that had been waiting just for him. As the day turned into night, John sat at home scrolling through his social media feeds. He posted the picture of the rock with the caption, "Look what I found on the beach today. A mysterious stone with strange markings. Anyone know what it could be?" He watched as the likes and comments started pouring in. People were fascinated by the rock and wanted to know more. John couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. It was almost as if he had discovered something new, something that nobody else had seen before. He started to do his own research, trying to find out if there were any other rocks like this one, if anyone had ever seen anything similar, but his search came up empty. As he lay in bed that night, John couldn't stop thinking about the rock. It was as if it had captured his imagination, taking hold of him in a way that nothing else ever had. He dreamed of finding more rocks like this one, of discovering something that nobody else had ever seen before. Little did he know that his innocent discovery would soon lead to a turn of events that he could never have imagined. John couldn't wait to share his discovery with his friends on social media. He uploaded the picture of the rock to his various accounts and added the caption, "Look what I found on the beach today, a mysterious stone with strange markings. Anyone know what it could be?" Within minutes, John's post began to attract a lot of attention. His friends and followers were intrigued by the rock and the unusual markings on its surface. They started commenting on the post, asking John questions about where he found it and what it could be. As the day went on, the post started to gain momentum. It was being shared by more and more people, reaching audiences that John had never even heard of. People were speculating about the rock's origins, with some suggesting that it could be a meteorite or even an ancient artifact. John was amazed by the response his post was getting. He had never seen anything like it before. It was as if the rock had taken on a life of its own, capturing the imagination of everyone who saw it. He started to receive messages from people he didn't even know, asking him about the rock and where they could find one like it. As the night wore on, John found it hard to tear himself away from his phone. He kept checking his notifications, watching as the post continued to gain popularity. It was as if the rock had become a celebrity overnight, with everyone wanting to know more about it. But even as John basked in the attention, there was a sense of unease creeping in. He couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. It was as if the rock was too special, too unique. He couldn't help but wonder if it was too good to be true. The next morning, John woke up to a barrage of messages on his phone. They were from people he didn't know, asking him about the rock and where they could find it. But there was one message that caught his eye. It was from a stranger who claimed to know more about the rock than John did. The stranger told John that the rock was not just any ordinary stone, but a valuable artifact that had been stolen from a museum several years ago. John couldn't believe what he was hearing. He had no idea that the rock was anything other than a simple pebble he had found on the beach. As the reality of the situation sunk in, John started to panic. He didn't know what to do. He had inadvertently become involved in something that he didn't understand, and he was afraid of what the consequences might be, but he knew he had to do something. In the end, John decided to go to the police. He showed them the picture of the rock on his phone and explained everything that had happened. The police were initially suspicious, but after investigating his story, they eventually believed him. They took the rock with them, promising to return it to the museum from which it had been stolen. For John, it was a humbling experience. He had gone from feeling like he had discovered something amazing to realizing that he had unwittingly become a part of something much bigger than himself. But even as he felt embarrassed and foolish, he couldn't help but feel a sense of wonder at the rock that had captured the attention of so many. John was relieved that he had done the right thing by going to the police, but little did he know that it was only the beginning of his troubles. The very next day, he heard a loud banging on his door. He opened it to find several police officers standing outside, demanding to search his house. John was taken aback by the suddenness of the raid. He asked the officers why they were there, but they refused to give him an answer. They marched into his house and started searching every room, tearing apart his belongings as they went. John tried to follow them, but he was ordered to stay outside. He watched in horror as the officers rifled through his possessions, throwing clothes and furniture aside in their search for something. It was as if they were looking for a needle in a haystack. After what felt like hours, the officers finally emerged from the house carrying a small bag with them. They refused to tell John what was inside, but they warned him that he was in serious trouble. They told him that they had reason to believe that he was involved in a criminal operation and that they would be taking him in for questioning. John was dumbfounded. He had no idea what they were talking about. He had never been in trouble with the law before, and he couldn't understand why he was being targeted. But as the officers led him away in handcuffs, he realized that his life would never be the same again. In the police station, John was interrogated for hours. The officers asked him a barrage of questions, demanding to know what he knew about the stolen artifact and who he had been in contact with, but John had no answers to give. He had been completely blindsided by the whole thing. As the hours turned into days, John felt his world shrinking around him. He was confined to a small cell with no contact with the outside world. He had no idea what was happening to his life, but he knew that it was slipping away from him. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the officers returned to his cell. They told him that they had found no evidence of wrongdoing on his part and that he was free to go. But John was not the same person he had been before. The experience had left him shaken and traumatized, and he knew that he would never be able to forget what had happened. As he walked out of the police station, he couldn't help but feel a sense of anger and frustration. He had been innocent all along, yet he had been treated like a criminal. And for what? For discovering a rock on the beach and sharing it with the world? John realized that the world was a strange and unpredictable place where the slightest mistake could lead to disastrous consequences, but he also knew that he couldn't let this experience define him. He had to move on and live his life, even if it meant leaving the mystery of the stone behind him forever. After the traumatic experience of being arrested and interrogated by the police, John was left with a lingering sense of unease. He had no idea why the simple act of posting a picture of a rock on the beach had led to such a massive overreaction from the authorities. But as he sat alone in his apartment, still trying to process everything that had happened, he received a phone call that would change everything. "Hello," John answered tentatively. "Mr. Smith, this is Dr. Johnson from the University of Archaeology. I believe you found something very important on that beach." John was taken aback. He had no idea what the man was talking about. "I'm sorry, Dr. Johnson, I don't know what you're referring to." "The rock, Mr. Smith, the stone that you found. We've been looking for it for years. It's a rare artifact from an ancient civilization, and it's worth millions of dollars." John's mind was spinning. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. "But why did the police arrest me? They said I was involved in a criminal operation. That's just standard protocol. I'm afraid we couldn't risk the artifact falling into the wrong hands, but now that we have it back, we can finally study it and learn more about our past." John felt a sense of relief wash over him. He was innocent after all, but he also felt a sense of wonder and awe. He had unwittingly stumbled upon a priceless piece of history, and he had no idea what it would lead to. Over the next few months, John became somewhat of a minor celebrity. The media had picked up on the story, and everyone wanted to know more about the man who had found the ancient artifact. He was invited to speak at conferences and was interviewed by numerous news outlets. He even received offers from collectors who wanted to buy the stone off him for exorbitant amounts of money, but John refused them all. He knew that the artifact was too important to be sold off to the highest bidder. It belonged in a museum where everyone could see it and learn from it. Eventually, the stone was placed in a museum in the city where it became a popular attraction for tourists and locals alike, and as John looked at it through the glass case, he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and accomplishment. He had unknowingly discovered something incredible, and it had led to a new chapter in his life. As he walked out of the museum, John knew that he would never forget the strange and unexpected journey that had brought him here. He had learned that the world was full of mysteries and surprises, and that sometimes the most unexpected things could lead to the greatest discoveries, but most of all he had learned that he was capable of anything even if he didn't know it yet. What did you think of this story? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, like the video, and subscribe. See you next time.